And we are officially live. Welcome everyone to the Human to Human podcast. Super excited today to welcome Mr. Ross Morgan to the show. And before I get Ross to introduce himself, I know a little bit about Ross, but as always, I like to give my guests the best bio that I possibly can. So Ross is a sales enablement expert who develops and delivers innovative sales training sessions and solutions to fast-growing B2B companies. He delivers results that are immediate, impactful, measurable, and substantive, which I think is very important. Right now, I believe he's being coached and mentored by his good friend, GuruGanesha. So super excited to learn about conscious selling today and kind of what it takes to stand out. And his passion is to really help his clients succeed. And what better person to talk about relationships in the world of business than Ross Morgan? So welcome, my friend.
It's nice to be here. Hope I can bring some value to your audience here.
Well, man, just talking to you a couple minutes offline prior to this recording, I can already tell you are you're probably a very likable guy, and I'm curious how you got that way.
Likable guy. Well, I mean, this is a human-to-human podcast, right? And life is about human-to-human interactions, right? The emotional impact that you have on the other side is more important than anything else. So I don't know where I got it. When I was brought up, like very shy growing up, extremely shy, very late to grow. I think I hit puberty around 19. I used to walk around pretending to have a deep voice. So I spent the first 18 years afraid to talk to people. I actually developed a insane stutter when I was about 12, 13. But moved past that. When I was 18, my father owned and operated a couple bars. So he put me behind the bar when I was 18, and that's where I really started to loosen up a little bit and learn how to deal and communicate with people.
Wow. This episode is officially, you have gone the most vulnerable, the quickest out of any episode. And we're 2 minutes. We're 2 minutes in.
Well, hey, you know what's funny is when I was younger, I tried to pretend to be older. And, my profile pic that you have, I got a ton of black hair. I'm sure you can't believe I have that much white hair. But now I'm 36 and I look like I'm 65. So it was a complete switch as I got older. But
you do not look 65. You don't look remotely close to 65. I'd put you 40 tops.
I tell you what, too, another cool tactic is self-deprecating humor. If you can make fun of yourself just a little bit when you're interacting with a complete stranger, it tends to loosen things up a bit, right?
I love that, man. Let's just dive right in. For those of you who are watching this, you can see that I think you can probably feel in the air why I said Ross feels like a likable guy. I've known him for all of 4 minutes, and already I'm like, I want to be best friends with this guy. So, dude, tell me a little bit just about your story and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
Well, I was born and raised in Western Canada. I now live in Southern Ontario, so I'm a couple hours south of Toronto, close to Buffalo. Yes, I am Canadian. When I'm not training, when I'm not building my business, I am learning to be a better dad. I got 3 kids. I got a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old. I got one in the pipeline. His name's Garrett. He's arriving in October.
The pipeline.
He's in the pipe. He's moving his way down. My wife Jessica and I are just sort of trying our best to become better parents as we go. I've been in high-tech software sales for about 8 years, with my attention exclusively on the revenue side of the business. And been with Conscious Selling for 3 years. That company is based out of Western Virginia. So that's a little bit of background on me, but think of me as a sales guy, sales enablement guy, sales trainer, and father. It's the best way to put it, right?
Fascinating. Being somebody who didn't feel like himself for the first 20 years of his life, someone who was potentially afraid to speak up, being in a career or industry now of sales where essentially all you're doing is, on the mic, you're always on, so to speak, right? You're always trying to be the expert. That's such a fascinating difference from the first half of your life to where you are now. And I'm curious kind of what was that transition like? And was there a catalyst moment that led you or drew you to sales?
When I was 23 years old, I was working at a golf course running a food and beverage department, and they brought in a sales trainer 2 months before I was fired. And fascinating couple of days. It sparked something, went home, started to search sales stuff. And that's kind of where it all started to manifest. But I've been in love with the game of sales for quite some time. I mean, it's a noble career when you do it the right way. But I think it comes with confidence. When you put in the time, you put in the work, and you know you can bring value, you know you can make a difference, that's when you start coming out of your shell. When you definitely have a message that's powerful enough to, help thousands and thousands of people out there. I don't know when it actually started to happen, but I feel like I was really shy, and then I took on a different persona when I was early 20s, and then kind of fell. I mean, we'll see if I change again, but I definitely was trying to become someone who I wasn't early on. Right.
In your, in the last 10, 15 years with your experience, where do you see sales reps, where do you see people in general make the biggest mistake when it comes to building relationships?
Usually starts with intention, right? Intent comes from deep within. And especially in sales, everything we teach is common sense, but it's painfully uncommon in the professional world of sales. When I was getting into sales all the way up till I was almost 30 years old, I thought sales was about making 500 dials, pushing people around, the convincer, right? We were all told if you become a great convincer, you're going to make a lot of sales and close a lot of deals. So it really does start with intent. And if I was to ask you, if we were to go interview 2,000 B2B software sales reps today, and they all had a sales call in 20 minutes, what do you think their intention would be prior to making that call?
Get the meeting, close the deal, get the contract.
That's it. Figure out the fastest way humanly possible to transfer money from the other side's pocket into my pocket. And that gets transmitted. And what gets transmitted is neediness. And that's the big issue with sales. Organizations call us in all the time, and they're usually surprised, but then they agree quickly. You're right. The intent of the entire organization, top to bottom, is wrong. It's about closing the deal, getting the ACV across the line, and showing up just in time for the renewal. So my advice to anybody who is trying to get away from that transactional sale, become more consultative, integrity-based, change your intent. And it's not just what you want your intent to be, but actually telling your prospective client 2-3 minutes into a call, saying something like, hey, I don't want to even suggest we do business until both parties, you and I, are completely convinced it's going to be the right thing to do. So that's where it starts. It starts up here.
Wow, that is so powerful. That is so powerful. Do you have an example of what a good intent looks like? I think about some of the conversations. I think about the horrible LinkedIn spam messages I get on LinkedIn. I think about the horrible cold emails and the prospecting. And you're right. What I've seen from personal experience is I'm being pitched to, sold to all the time. And I am one of 1 billion plus people on LinkedIn. And I hear from friends and peers all the time. We actually have this running joke where we actually just screenshot like the most hilarious cold spam messages we get. And we all show each other. And it's becoming more and more common that like these messages are being called out and being displayed publicly. So from an intent standpoint, you're right. There's absolutely zero intent. So I'm just curious if you have some examples of what does a good intent look like?
Yeah, it's, one good exercise to do and something to think about if you're in sales or leadership or management is you start asking yourself what you want the other side to say about you 1 year from today, right? You're to call all your prospective clients and clients up 1 year from today. You hit your quota out of the park, quota attainment's through the roof. Everyone's making money. What does the other side need to say about you? How do you need to be remembered? That's where it starts. And if salespeople are truthful in the beginning, It's a lot of bad stuff. But it has to sound like, Ross really took the time to understand the business. I felt like everything he did, he always had my best interest at heart. He challenged my thinking. He challenged the status quo. He got me out of my comfort zone. He listened. 99% of salespeople don't listen. They don't. They don't know how to listen. And that's usually because they take on a different persona, right? You think about a sales rep who does really well in the interview process, kills it, gets through the panel, the presentation, everybody falls in love with her. But then he or she gets in front of a prospective client after onboarding, and they morph into some unrecognizable creature because they think they need to be somebody else. So, especially with conscious selling, that's the big thing that separates us from a lot of other stuff that's out there, is the inner game of sales. Making sure not just that you have the right intention, but you have what's called a prosperity mindset, which is, I'm going to be okay whether or not I make this sale or not, right? I'll be able to feed my 3 kids. I'll be able to take care of my family, put food on the table, because we're not right for everybody. And the minute these salespeople early on in conversation can say right out of the gates, I don't know yet if we're right for you. I don't want to only suggest we do business until we both feel like it's truly going to be in your best interest and you're going to get a significant return on your investment. So that's an example of what a good intent might sound like early on in a stage 2 call.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I don't think people have the courage to be that bold or that upfront or that honest, quite frankly. I lived in a world where I had to hit quotas. I had to make those dials. I had to fill the pipeline. I had to bring in new ops every month. And there was this sense of pressure. And I think in today's world, I think we're expected to sell more with less. Targets are getting bigger. We're more stressful. Our own personal dynamics have changed. Introduce mental health to the equation, introduce, just these unbelievable targets and stretch targets. And that's, these are words that companies love. So how do you juggle and combat some of these external pressures while trying to create this prosperity map? It's just, to me, I get it and I totally understand it and I'm all for it. I know the typical first objection you're going to hear is, I don't have time, or I've got numbers to hit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this: the easy way is the hard way, and the hard way is the easy way. Often when we get in front of a net new organization, we really need to work with the senior managers, right? We got to get their buy-in quick. They got to realize that chances go up. The likelihood of them meeting or exceeding their own success criteria go up if you can meet or exceed the prospective clients. So it is a mind shift. If you got your manager all over you, ACV, forecast it accurately, ACV, close the deal, get it across the line, it's unhealthy. And what happens is that those deals eventually do churn. They will go away. It's not good revenue. So it's, people who feel stress, the quota is not a burden. Don't think of it. People are just weighted down by these quotas. And then what happens is they have a really good month and they start back at ground zero the next day. It's constant stress. They're living out of fear all day long. So my advice there is help the other side meet or exceed their success criteria, and your quota will take care of itself. It's the best kind of piece of advice I can give for you. And you're not right for everybody. All these sales reps think that they need to spend time, 45, 50 minutes with every single prospective client that gets flipped their way, no matter what the lead source is. And that, my friend, is ass backwards, because a lot of these prospects are fake opportunities. So you're right. It is a mind shift. It has to start from the top. And someone needs to say from the CEO level, we are in the business to help our prospective clients meet or exceed the success criteria. We don't want to engage until we're convinced we can precisely hit the center of the target for what they're trying to do. And once you can establish that, it'll start trickling down the organization, and it starts to feed into other incredible departments like customer success and professional services.
It's such a powerful approach. It's completely flipped the script as to what a traditional company or a traditional organization, how they would operate. And just changing that language from an internal dialogue perspective, I think you said the word transmitted earlier. It does. It transmits everywhere.
Yeah. But mainly if you can transmit that early on and the other side starts to believe that you do have their best interest at heart, what happens is it's called a role reversal, right? So a lot of these organizations, they're highly transactional. They're trying to get deals across the line. And if you were a fly on the wall, it would sound like they are trying to convince the buyer to do shit all day long. Pitch, 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 handle the objection. Pitch, 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 handle the objection. The role reversal is whereby if you're listening to someone conduct a call, someone who is trained, instead of the seller convincing the buyer starts convincing the seller. And when that role reversal happens, selling becomes easy, becomes enjoyable. And they're not just convincing you that they have challenges in areas where you have solutions, but the challenges that they're having are having a strong enough impact financially on the business, and also that finding a better way is a high priority on their list of things to do. And once they can convince you of those three things, then you welcome them into your world and you start to engage and you start moving down the sales process.
Yeah, it completely changes the dynamic of the relationship.
I mean, sales is a series of human to human interactions, right? That's why I love your podcast name. It's the human to human podcast. That's what sales is. Text messaging, emails, phone calls, whatever technology you're using. The number one determining factor behind your success in sales is the emotional impact that you have on the other side. And again, common sense makes a lot of sense, but you assign someone a quota and it often goes out the window.
So fascinating how you can completely change your perspective and dynamic the moment, like you said, you're a rock star in the interview process, and then you get slapped into this other environment, and all of a sudden you're this creature out of nowhere who's got quotas and pressures, and you're just not you anymore. So fascinating.
You're operating from two places, right? Normally salespeople, a large majority of salespeople who, by the way, are not coming anywhere close to hitting their quota, are always operating from this place of fear. Fear of not hitting the number, getting fired, maybe getting temporarily furloughed or laid off, especially while this COVID thing's going on. They don't sleep. They don't eat. It's stressful. And then you have people who are operating from a place of confidence, power. And it's all up here, man. Right? Like, we won't go into messaging or methodology until we have won at least 85% of our room. And they've bought into this whole idea of it all starts with me and my intention.
Man, I love that so much. And where I would love to transition this conversation is into conscious selling. When I heard the phrase conscious selling for the first time, I kind of had to piece together what my own idea was or my own definition. And for me, I described it internally to myself as, okay, maybe being empathetic, maybe having a two-way dialogue, more collaborative, more consultative, less pitching, less dictatorship, more of a team, less than a client relationship. So that's kind of how I describe conscious selling to myself. But I'd love to hear from you. What is your definition of conscious selling?
Well, the opposite of conscious is not unconscious. Our other co-founder, Frank Garza, puts it well. It's non-conscious. So let's start there. A lot of salespeople are not aware of what is going on before they interact with another human being. Their mindset's not right. Their intent's not right. They don't know the purpose of the meeting. They're showing up as someone who they're not. So conscious is you are fully aware of the environment, and you're trying to create an environment which is based on trust, right? People do business with people who they like and they trust. We all get it. The other side is thinking three things. Can I trust you with the things that I care most about? Can I trust you to help me make the right decision? Can I trust you to not help me, can I trust you to help me not make another stupid decision inside my business? So when I think of conscious, I think of the opposite of non-conscious. I think of someone who is completely aware, not just of themselves, but is also educated on who they're talking to, so they can demonstrate trust and competency very quickly. I mean, you mentioned empathy. Like, empathy is getting tossed around so much, especially after COVID. You got to be empathetic. You got to be empathetic 2 minutes into a sales call. Well, I got news for everybody. Sympathy is not synonymous with empathy. People think that sympathy is, I feel sorry for you. Empathy is not demonstrated until 15 minutes into a conversation. So if I'm meeting with you, I open up this fantastic environment, which is going to allow me to get to the truth about what's really going on in your world. You start telling me what's working, what's not working, where you are now, where you want to be. We identify your success criteria. Then I'm in a position to articulate your situation back to you better than you could ever. That is empathy. And that takes work. That means you got to listen. That means you got to become an incredible facilitator to hit the empathy target. So there's a lot of bullshit right now on the web, people posting about empathy first, empathy first. Empathy does not happen until usually the 15, 20-minute mark. You can come out and you can demonstrate competency early. That's easy to do. Competency is, hey, looks like this person can do something successfully and efficiently. But let's get the definition of empathy right out there today. It's one thing that bothers me, and it's understanding how the other side sees the world. That's my long-winded description of conscious. And again, if you walk a sales floor, and I do it all the time, especially in Toronto, if I decide, okay, yeah, I'll go out there and I'll meet with the team face-to-face, I usually walk the sales floor. And often it's a bunch of non-conscious sellers who are doing 90% of the talking. And when they're talking, they're pitching. Doesn't make sense.
I once heard someone say, whoever is talking more is, quote, losing. And it always kind of stuck with me. And I don't like the word losing. I think it's just, yeah, like you said, we have 2 ears for a reason.
Whoever talks first loses every single time. That's why we're both quiet, right? But yeah, it's just for whatever reason, salespeople just can't wait to say the next thing. I mean, there's a stereotype that's out there, fair? Overly
Absolutely.
aggressive, pushy, obnoxious, talk too much, need to hit the quota, trying to do everything to get my needs met. Don't give a shit about the other side. And I'm not harping on salespeople today. There's a lot of phenomenal salespeople. There's master practitioners out there, right? The top 1%. You listen to a top 1% out there. They do not convince anybody to do anything. You got to take the emotional pressure completely out of the sale. And that's where the relationship starts to build. The minute you apply emotional pressure to the other side, it's over.
I love that so much. I'm making a note to re-listen to this very particular last 60 seconds because I think it's super powerful. If you're listening to this, go back, please, over the last 60 seconds because that was just some dynamite information. So Ross, how do you, in this world of, again, prospecting, this world of LinkedIn messages, cold emails, we often talk about the same, or at least I get prospected virtually the same way by anyone. I haven't seen anything innovative come my way in a long time. I send a lot of video messages, a lot of audio notes. They obviously stand out. Mm-hmm. How do you build that likingness and trust in this digital world? Is there anything that you see work better than your typical approaches?
Sure. Well, I'll call you out because your approach worked quite well. You connected with me on LinkedIn. You sent me a message followed by a voice clip that I'm going to listen to. And I was inspired to jump on here just because of your efforts. So kudos to you on that. But again, people are, for whatever reason, unwilling to do that because they care more about what the other side thinks about them than they think about themselves. I mean, think about how powerful that LinkedIn message was. You know, you addressed somebody who we both knew. I think you gave me a couple of rewards, and a reward is giving someone a little, confidence. People like that. I'll take some of that. And you had a call to action. I'm like, shit, I'm going to get back at this guy. So, prospecting is hard. It's very, very difficult. I have to do it too. But again, the easy way is the hard way, and the hard way is the easy way. The easy way is to just send out 5,000 messages, boilerplate canned, and you're going to get a very small percentage of people getting back to you. But if you take the time to identify a prospective client that precisely hits the center of the target for what you can help them with, and you start to build what I call a messaging toolkit, right? So if you were coming after me and you were trying to sell me a service, I'm trying to figure out, first off, what's Ross's responsibility? What's his job description? What does he sell? Who does he sell to? What are challenges that he's probably having? In the exact verbiage that I would say I'm having trouble, right? So the first column is challenges, i.e. Ross is sick and tired of, and start filling in the blanks. Then you got to know how those problems are showing up as challenges, which is the evidence. Then you got to figure out if this challenge is costing me money, and of course it's going to. You got to figure out how it's measured. You got to figure out what it's costing, how it's going to show up, and then a solution that you might have. And once you build these toolkits, the better you understand the other side, the more likely you're going to be able to hit the center of the target with your message. But it's business acumen. Right? You got to understand the business that they're inside of better than everybody else. And you got to be willing to show up on tons of different channels. Like my wife used to be in the MLM business, multi-level marketing. She was phenomenal. She built the brand, and that's what they taught her how to do. You got to become a personality. It takes a long time to develop a message and a brand. And it's like that, it was like Gary Vaynerchuk guy, right? Left, 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 left. Then you throw a right hook. So am I a master at prospecting? I wouldn't say that, but it's a prerequisite to be successful, right? A lot of my business, thankfully, is coming from referrals, but you got to think through the lowest hanging fruit. Like really think about it. Put together a strategy that makes sense, get the message right, and show up on different channels.
I love that idea of a messaging toolkit. And what I wrote down was challenges, evidence, and figure out how it's measured. Economic
impact, and then areas where you have solutions.
Got it.
And that's usually what happens with a new sales rep, right? Like if you were to bring someone onto your team for the very first time, they put together this messaging toolkit. We focus on business acumen first. Then you take that message, because you've interviewed a whole bunch of people to figure out how the problems are showing up. Then you start to write your content. Then you start to figure out what podcasts you're going to start running, who your guests are, and it all sort of flows from there.
I love it, man. I love that approach. Next, what I'd like to transition into is, I think I read this on your website, and I think I might have heard you say it once too during my digging and research of you.
Yeah.
This idea of personal presence.
Sure.
How personal presence I think it's been said to be the number one indicator as to somebody's sales success. Could you talk to me a little bit about personal presence and how do you make it work for you versus the other way around?
Good. I like the way you put that, because your personal presence is either going to work for you or it's going to work against you. So Bert Decker wrote a book, and you can't believe everything you read, but the way we put it, and this is actually in our workbooks, is your personal presence, i.e. the emotional impact that you have on another side, shows up in three ways. Shows up in your physiology, your tonality, and your verbiage. So 55% of the emotional impact that I'm having on you right now is through my physiology, my body language, my posture, my eye contact. 37% of the emotional impact I'm having on you is through my tonality, which is the sound of my voice. How I say things is 7 times more powerful than what I say. You know, there's a guy out there, the Wolf of Wall Street, right? The straight line, persuasive sales guy, opposite of what I teach. But I had to figure out why this guy was so successful. This guy owes millions of dollars in restitution. So I read his book and I started to learn a little bit more about his sales methodology. And the one thing that he mastered is tone. Only 7% of the emotional impact that I'm having on you is the words. And again, that's where salespeople get it wrong, because they focus way too much on what they're saying instead of how they're saying it. So 55%, 38%, 7%, which is why video is so bloody powerful right now. Right? Salespeople are reluctant to use this camera that's on the top of their MacBook. Why? You're going to have an advantage. You got a 55%. I can't guarantee you success, but I can guarantee you the best chance of success. But again, right? Attention energizes, intention transforms. When you meet someone, there's always going to be some energy that gets bounced back and forth, right? But it's got to show up. It's got to be in your favor, and the other side's got to feel it. So that's the personal presence. And my advice to salespeople who are on this call today or who listen to this, because that matters the most, listen to your last 5, 6 sales calls and think about the emotional impact that you're having on the other side. Draw that triangle, grade yourself, because if that's not working for you, you're in big trouble.
I love that, man. The 738-55. I've been hearing more and more about that principle. And I think these days, a lot of people are talking about Chris Voss and about his new book and kind of the whole tactical empathy that a little bit that we talked about earlier in the 738-55. It's, yeah, I see most of my friends and most of my entrepreneur and business owner friends continue to, what I would say, hide behind email and text messages. And yeah, like you said, tonality, my physical presence, there's so much more to an audio message and a video message than a simple 6-word email.
Right.
But I think there's fear around, I don't know what to say. What if it's a bad video? What if they don't get back to me? I mean, it's the same fear as you have when you send a normal message anyways, just on video.
It is. It's just the application side of it, right? I mean, if you're to onboard a new sales rep and ask them to do this, if they don't have the training and they don't put in the reps and the time, they're going to suck at it. And they're never going to get someone to respond to them. Right? I mean, the conversion rate's low to begin with. So if people are going to adopt this and people are going to give this a shot, the only thing that transfers, knowledge into skill is training. You've got to put in the reps. And until you're sold on it, until you listen to yourself back and go, wow, that's good shit, then you shouldn't send it.
Right. You said something earlier that I want to go back on because I think it's so powerful, and you dropped a lot of gold already, but there's one thing you said that completely shifted a paradigm for me. And I think there's a ton of area of improvement on my end for this dynamic. And you said earlier that somebody who practices conscious selling does not need to convince the buyer. And you introduced this idea of role reversal, where if that dynamic changes and that person is trying to convince you of why why they reached out to you, or of why their need is why is it such a priority? Why is your solution the right fix? How do you create that environment? How do you what are some of the success factors that increase the probability of you creating an environment like that where the roles are reversed? Because I'm telling you that what I see online, and even how I feel personally, I still feel like there's this energy of trying to convince. And I mean, looking back at history, like how often does that actually work? Probably goose egg.
Right. So the greatest part when you get good at stuff like this is when you start convincing the salesperson, who else are you convincing?
Yourself.
That's right. So where it starts is with what we call an upfront agreement, right? If I was entering into a sales call with you, I'm letting you know, right? Remember to start with the intent, right? Purpose of this call is to figure out if we're qualified for one another. I don't know yet. My intention is to keep it exploratory. I want to make it about you. I only want to suggest we take a next step or even think about doing business together until we're both truly convinced that it's going to be in your best interest. Now, maybe this person's going to come at you and say, well, I just want to see a demonstration. I just want you to build me a quote. Well, the sales rep's got to be prepared to start asking questions like, how important is it if I do show you a demo? We do invest this time to explore. It hits the center of the target. And that's called a moment of truth. Because it also comes down to, if you don't have a plan, then you're going to default to the way the buyer wants to buy. And they're going to want to push you around. They're going to want to tell you to do stuff. And if you're not trained and you don't have a system, you're going to do it. And that's called a unilateral concession. Salespeople make them all day long. The buyer makes no commitments. They tell the seller to do stuff. They go run around and do it and get nothing back of equal or greater return. So where it starts is we set the ground rules. And I'd say, hey, is it safe to assume we're not doing business together until I can precisely hit the center of the target for what you're trying to accomplish? Now, they got to convince me that that's important. And then I let them know the only way for me to hit the center of the target is if I truly understand your current situation, where you are now, where you want to be. Then I'll be in a better position to tell you if I think I can help, not show you. And I'll start high level. I'm not going to get you a demonstration. When you do that properly, walls come down. Like 6 feet of reinforced steel come down, and all of a sudden you sit back, ask a series of questions, and when they convince you, they also convince themselves. It is beautiful when it happens.
Man, that's so amazing. The idea of the upfront agreement, as well as stating and not having that expectation. And really it comes down to the intent that you said, is not having the right intent to begin with, just relieves that pressure.
Correct. Because the buyer's thinking one thing: how do I get in and out of here quick? They don't want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. There's that stereotype that follows everybody around. They're trying to get rid of you. So you got to show up different. But again, the big takeaway, if your people are listening, is if you don't have a plan, the buyer will enlist you to execute their plan. And their plan is to waste your time, get you to do a whole bunch of stuff, make 0 commitments in return, lie to your face, and disappear. Like, think about it. Dead no decision, DND. 40-50% of opportunities today that are getting created are going dead, i.e., the salesperson has taught the buyer that talking to them is a complete waste of time. Right? Think about it. These organizations are spending tons of money to get top of funnel. Then they hire an SDR to qualify in. Then they flip it to an account executive. After one 30-minute call, ghost city, baby. They're gone. Mm-hmm. And the salesperson chases and chases and chases. And that's all because the salesperson did not have a plan. So that's where it all starts. But the issue is if you're intense there, everything you do has to be congruent with it. It's the end of the month. It's the 29th. You're breathing down my neck to get the ACV. I got to stay with it. If it's not in your best interest to close this deal right now, don't. You're going to lose it. So that's my spiel on that.
I love that, man. And there's another value bomb you dropped within what you just said, and it's this notion of not giving your time away. I think many people bend over backwards and they make themselves available, change their own internal meetings just to make a client happy or a prospect happy. And yeah, man, there's a lot of opportunities that land in that middle gray zone of nothing and ghost city, call it catfishing, whatever you want to call it, really. How do you protect your time? Because I think sales reps are bad with their time and they'll bend over backwards to be on a prospect schedule.
Well, it all starts with a guiding principle, right? And that guiding principle is, the salespeople that I've taught over the years, when I walk by their desks, when I visit the offices, if there's one quote they usually have from me, it's this one. And I got this obviously from my mentor, GuruGanesha, which is, my time as a seller is incredibly valuable. Thus, I do not give it away. The prospective client needs to earn it. And they earn it after they convince me that they have compelling reasons to seriously consider my stuff. And it's tough to adopt that. But once you do, you'll start making a lot more money. We talked about fake opportunities. They're out there. 20, 30% coming through talking to salespeople. They're looking for a competing bid. They're looking for what's called free consulting. Their intent, no matter how good you are, I ain't ever going to buy from you. The great sellers are probably closing 35% of the time. So one skill set you got to get really good at is you got to develop what I call is this gut instinct for people who are wasting my time. I'm in sales too. I don't train unless I sell. I got a pipeline just like everybody else. When I look at my pipeline, when I look at my day, when I look at my calendar and my opportunities and my forecast, I think one thing first: who the F is wasting my time? And I'm trying to qualify out as fast as possible. You listen to one of my sales calls, I'm trying to disqualify them at least 6 to 7 times within the first 20 minutes, using a technique which is what we call walking towards the door. Because I do not want to spend time with people who have zero intent to buy. People come to me for free consulting. I feel it. I see it. I sense it. They want to know what I got. They want a demonstration of my methodology. Not until there's mutual commitment will I do anything. People send me RFPs. You will never see me fill out an RFP, ever. Ever. People are like, what do you mean? When I get an RFP, I get excited. I call my SVP up, we celebrate. We spend 2 days filling the bloody thing out.
And this is another very fascinating topic. There's such a big difference between somebody who is interested versus somebody who is committed. Now, if someone listening to this is having conversations that often end up more in that interested world, but they can't convert to the committed world, do you have any tips or advice on language, approach, how to take somebody who's interested to committed? Or is that the wrong question? Is the question that's the wrong person to begin with?
Well, again, right, you got to facilitate enough until they start convincing you, right? Right out of the gates, you don't know yet if the prospective client's going to be right for you. But when you take them down a qualification whereby they're convincing you the compelling reasons, we talk about the economic impact and the financial trouble that the business is in, they start convincing me that there's no possible way we're going to hit this revenue target if we do what we continue to do. Zero probability we're getting to where we need to go in Q4 if we completely do the same thing. That's when they start to get, okay, I'm a little bit more emotionally invested in this than I thought. So until you get through that in-depth qualification, that's when you figure out, is someone kicking tires? Is someone committed? And, deals that are stuck bring the future into the present. You got to know the success criteria. You got to know how it's measured. You got to understand what a successful implementation looks like just by asking that question alone. And if they don't involve you in that description, you're done. You're toast. So you got to be able to walk towards the door. You have to say, hey, if what's going on right now, this isn't a high priority, I'd be happy to revisit it when it is. I appreciate you, my friend. And you slowly start to walk towards the door. And one of two things are going to happen. They walk out, great, I'm not wasting my time anymore. Or they go, wait. And you got to now sit back and decide if you want to continue to engage. So again, right, you can't do this unless you have pipeline. People struggle with this type of approach because their pipeline is not big enough. But the people that we've trained, the people that are really good at this, that are making a bunch of money, value their time more than anything else.
I have a question on that. They say sales is as much of a disqualification as it is a qualification. And it sounds like this is what you're referring to right now. And you said in the first 20 minutes, you're asking a bunch of questions that will hopefully allow people to walk towards the door. Sure. Do you have one question you could share with me that you've used or have found has worked the best when it comes to trying to disqualify someone?
Well, first off, we look at we have this thing called the commitment meter, which is 3 levels of pain. So it usually starts with, how's the problem showing up? And that is usually, as a seller's opportunity, the first time to disqualify. They have challenges. How's it showing up as problems? If I can't solve for it, then I'm going to start disqualifying right off the bat. Another way to disqualify is when they start convincing me that they've done absolutely nothing in the past to solve for this problem, i.e. the historical data. They tell me that this has been a problem for 2 years. And when I ask them what are some things they've tried to address it, and they tell me nothing, I don't know how pumped I am about moving this sales cycle forward. Why now? You've done nothing in the past 2 years. You got to do a great job convincing me now something different. The other thing is the financial piece, right? Building value into the deal. And most salespeople don't do this. And most buyers are thinking about it, but they don't do the exercise. You got to figure out the problems that the other side is having, not just how they're showing up, the historical, but the financial impact it's having on the organization. When you can do that, everything starts to change. Now, the disqualification piece is, you just told me that it's not going to cost the business too much money right now. The issues you're having, because my solution's a lot of money. So you're going to have a hard time cost justifying the investment. The last piece is, people do things for their own reasons, not the company's reasons. I hate to tell you, but they do things for their own personal reasons. So unless the prospective client can convince me that finding a better way is a high priority on their list of things to do, I will not engage. That's the best answer I got for disqualifying.
That's a good one, man.
And if they can meet all that criteria, well, guess what? They're now ready to hear a little bit about my solution. but the qualification's not done. And usually salespeople fall over because they don't take time to understand the who, the how, the when. If it's a competitive situation, they don't take the time to co-build mutual outcome plans that define step by step the best way to get from where they are now to where the other side has everything they need to say yes or no in some sort of mutually agreeable time frame. I mean, there's so much to this, but to answer your question, like when I'm dealing with someone, I'm finding ways to walk away. Like I'm throwing objections out on the table all day long. And if they can't handle them, I walk. I get to go spend some more time with my kids.
That's so amazing. I think, yeah, that qualification versus disqualification process is so important. I think sellers, sales reps, people in general, we're always trying to convince, hey, look how good our solution is. Look how we are the perfect fit for you. Oftentimes we're even too loose on our criteria. So we're willing to accept anyone and everyone. And being in a circle of, amazing entrepreneurs in the city and business owners, the ones that I've seen have the most success have super dialed in messaging. They know what they're really good at, and they'll be the first to own what they can't deliver on.
Right.
And there's no room for gray. This is who I am, or this is what I offer. And if I can't help you, I'm just going to let you know right now.
Well, nothing more builds trust than that. Right. So to your point, I'm glad you brought it up. When you're selling something, you should be finding one or two things that might be important to them that you can't deliver on. And then you can flat out say, hey, the fact that I can't do this and that, does that mean that we should discontinue this discussion? Nothing builds trust more than that. You ask me, hey, can we do a role play? Of course we can do a role play, man. What do you want to role play? You want to role play an upfront agreement?
Sure. I would love to role play with you.
Yeah, okay.
I would actually love to role play two scenarios if we can. And
Sure.
I'm so grateful to have you here today, man. Just want to say that in the middle of this episode. So grateful for your willingness to share this amazing information with us. The first would be, an upfront agreement. And the next would be, I'm trying to call this like the ultimate discovery call.
Uh-huh.
Short, concise, to the point, qualify, disqualify, boom, bang, boom. I think what I've seen of some of your stuff online is one video in particular that I watched of yours on YouTube.
Yeah.
Within 15 minutes, you were able to articulate everything. You were able to, most sales conversations, many of my conversations tend to drag. And I feel like what you said earlier, maybe I'm not in full control, or maybe I'm not in as control as I thought I was.
Sure.
And listening to your structure in terms of how you owned that conversation and you delivered the message and you articulated a very good value proposition. I might sound like I'm rambling right now, but just the way you control that 15-minute window.
Sure.
I used to have discovery calls that were 30, 45 minutes in the past, and it would end up as this DND.
Right.
The opportunity would just die down. And I was like, well, I just spent 45 minutes with you. What do you mean?
I did a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do an upfront agreement, right? So this is what we call, it's a first step in our selling system. We'll say that you and I have 30 minutes on the calendar. That's all we know. Maybe one of my colleagues spoke to you yesterday after cold calling you, and you're meeting me for the very first time. I am going to try to sell you some sales training because that would only make some sense, right? So I'll dial into you. You can play whatever role you want. You want to be a complete bastard, I may switch the role reversal on you and put you under pressure. If you're nice to me, I may not do that. But either way, I don't care what you do. You can come at me, you can look for information, you can ask me questions right out of the gate, but listen to the way I control the call for the first 90 seconds. After that, I can talk a little bit more and I can give you some examples for qualifying in. Sound good?
Amazing.
All right, say ring, ring, I'll pick up. Oh,
Ring.
hold on first. How do you pronounce your name, man? Because I've heard people screw it up so many times.
Karan Nijhawan. Karan. I often describe it as an ocean current without the T at the end.
All right, Karan. All right, last thing I want to do is start calling you Karen right now, okay?
I get that a lot.
Your credibility will go out the window. So, ring, ring. Is that Karen?
Hi, this is Karan.
Karan, very nice to meet you, sir. Ross at this end from Conscious Selling.
How you doing?
Good, man. Were you expecting my call?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, Well, my colleague had set aside 30 minutes. Perhaps you didn't get the calendar invite?
Oh, Ross. Yes. I was expecting your call. How's it going, man?
Good, man. So that does sound familiar?
Yes, it does.
Good. How's quarantine life?
Trying to make the most of it, spending more time at home. Just trying to get back into whatever this new normal is. I have no idea what it looks like, but just trying to get by.
How are you wearing a sweatshirt when it's 45 degrees? I'm sweating over here. I mean, it's 39. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how you getting away with a sweatshirt here.
Air conditioning's on bust, and on some of those days, man, you just got to have that favorite hoodie on.
Good stuff. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. I want to be sensitive to it. When Ganesh set this up, he set us up for 20 minutes today. Is that still okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. And the purpose of this call is just to continue the discussion, right? To figure out if we're qualified for one another. Because right now, I don't know that yet. Now, for you to walk away after 30 minutes going, wow, one of the better sales calls I've had in a while, what needs to happen? What are you hoping we talk about?
I'd love to learn about what a successful implementation looks like on your end, kind of what you've seen work well for your clients. I'd love to get into a little bit about the pricing structure and kind of how you operate from a pricing standpoint. And the third thing would be, I've made a lot of mistakes in my past. I've hired companies like you. Nothing seems to work for me. And I think that's probably what I'm afraid of the most, is that this idea is very new to me. It's new to my company. And we've always kind of done it our way. Mm-hmm. And we've tried to hire somebody internal to help us get to the next step. It sounds like it's a one and done type of opportunity.
So sounds like you would have to be comfortable with a whole bunch, and you'd have to be convinced that we can precisely hit the center of the target with something like this until you even thought about bringing us in, right?
Yeah, I think I would need to feel comfortable, just to be mindful of your time as well as ours.
So let me lay out my intention here. All right. My intent today is to keep this exploratory. Okay. I don't want to even suggest we take a next step until you and I are both convinced that it's truly going to be in your best interest. And the best way to do that is I got to understand your success criteria. So if you're okay with it, why don't we spend the first 15 minutes, talk about your world, what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, where you are now, where you want to be. And then I will be in a much better position to tell you if I think I can help you out. You okay if we approach it that way?
Yeah, it sounds great.
And the other thing that's important, because your organization is pretty big, let's spend 12 minutes after that to better understand how you might make a decision like this and who might have to be involved. The other thing we should talk about too is money. You told me right out of the gates, you're not doing this unless you see an ROI. So one of my jobs is to help you build value into this deal that we're about to make. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
One more thing. If at any point you don't feel like I'm treating you fairly, let me know. If at any point you don't think this is right, we can stop. Sound good?
Perfect.
And we're out.
That was amazing. That approach made me feel so connected to you, so close to you on a relationship level. You felt like, although I was hearing you for the first time, the way you interacted with me,
right,
I felt as if you were a longtime friend. Mm-hmm. And it completely took the pressure off of me. I didn't feel like you were going to sell me anything, because we were both on this agreement that this would be exploratory based on just the language you used. Yeah. I didn't feel an inclination of, okay, this guy's about to pitch me, or there's clearly no ROI. He actually listened. Mm-hmm.
And then the big thing is, if let's say we ran that meeting, it cannot be my idea to do anything else. It's got to be your idea. You love your ideas way more than you're going to love my ideas. So I got to figure out a way for you to convince me that taking a next step makes consummate sense. So yeah, man, I think, and just doing a simple role play like that is going to set you up in the beginning for success. Now, if you don't do continue to, facilitate like that and sort of maintain that level of professionalism and that level of curiosity, it will go the other way quick. Because the issue is you start to tell me that you have problems, and I immediately want to start talking about my solutions. I can't wait to tell you I can solve for your problems. But that's where you really got to slow it down. Continue to ask a series of questions, create that role reversal. And if you do, it's not going to be me dragging you through a sales process that's uncomfortable. You're going to walk side by side with me the rest of the way, because there's going to be a level of mutual commitment at every single step, because that's one of our rules. There has to be a mutual level of commitment every step of the way. If there is, again, phenomenal way to make money and to help people out.
I think you just completely redefined selling on this call, my friend. Kudos to you for just having such passion and integrity in the way you articulate your ideas, your methodologies, your presence on this call. You're very attentive this entire time. It's mutually respected on my end. And I just wanted to say thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure, man.
I've got 2 rapid fire questions. They're not even rapid fire anymore. I still like to say that word though. Favorite book? And I'd love to hear maybe one favorite sales book and one of your personal favorite go-to books.
Favorite sales book? Guy and I by the name of Mahan Khalsa. He was Ganesha's. So my teacher, mentor, good friend, GuruGanesha, founder of Conscious Selling. This is a guy who taught Ganesh. So Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. Phenomenal book. Ganesh is actually coming out with a new book probably before the end of this year. It's called Conscious Selling, Taking the High Road to Sales Success. Unbelievable book coming out.
Amazing. Really excited to dive into that. You'll have to let us know when that's available. And my second question is, I can't wait to hear your response on this one. Tomorrow morning, the entire world, every city, every country, tomorrow morning, everyone wakes up, and for whatever reason, the entire world is looking at the exact same billboard. But Ross gets to control the message of what's on that billboard for all of humanity to see. What would you write?
How you do anything is how you do everything. Live and die by that one.
It's a great place to end it, man. Thank you so much for just being real, honest, authentic, vulnerable. A lot of what you said about your early life from 1 to 19, I could relate to a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say thank you. I truly meant it when I said this episode got vulnerable within 120 seconds. And that's the quickest that any episode has become vulnerable. And this is episode, I think maybe 11 or 12. Anyways, just wanted to publicly say that. And dude, you're a rock star, and I'm excited to get to know you better as well.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again soon.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.